Ready.
Well, welcome again to the monthly seminars that Tustin Longevity Center puts on. And again, the aim of these seminars is to educate our population here, the patient-based population of Tustin Longevity. There is so much to be taught in preventive medicine. And by recording these, we used to do them without the YouTube video, but so many people have difficulty coming out here, and so it is a great blessing. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is, I think you have on the YouTube, if you look on the YouTube, you'll see these questionnaires. I'll hand these out, or do you mind? Thank you, my wonderful audience. It's nice to be live. I feel like I'm a Fox News or CNN with live people. Okay, so we have some questions. You'll see this question hopefully on your YouTube site. And the title of this questionnaire, and these questions are not necessarily in order. I noticed this time I didn't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're just point bullets, and we will make sure that we get through our questionnaire for you thank you so much, by the end of the evening. I need a timer. Who would like to time me and give me an idea when it's 8 o'clock at the 1 hour mark?
I got this.
Okay, all right. And that way, the last half hour, we can make sure we answered all the questions, okay? So I titled this today to be the holidays. There should be a plural there, holidays, sugar, and the flu. Okay, you all see that? Holidays, sugar, and the flu. And we have happy dopamine thoughts when we think of the holidays, right? When you think about the things you're going to eat. Is that not true, what we think of in the holidays? And then sugar, of course, we think of the treats. But how many of you think about the flu that you'll be at risk for getting or possibly get? How many of you think of that?
A lot of people get sick in January.
A lot of people get sick. Some of my audience is saying, yes, that's very true. And one of the biggest things we do at the general practice that we run with us 5 doctors at Tustin Longevity is we have all these college kids coming in to visit their family over the Christmas holiday, and they're sick, and they are stressed, and they're eating the cafeteria foods, and they are then flying on a tube, an aluminum tube, and this then can circulate the air, and you're picking up viruses and stuff. You get home, and very often the holidays for us clinicians, and many of you, is a stressful bronchitis or a flu syndrome, these kind of things. So how many days are in the holiday? How many days are in the holiday? Well, I wrote them down there. It's Thanksgiving is November 28th this year, right? Mm-hmm. How many days is November 28th? One day, right? But how many of you are going to also go to your cousins or your sisters or your brother-in-laws or your best friends, or your aunts or relatives or friends, and they're going to have leftovers, right? And they're going to try and feed that to you. And you'll just have to just take a sample of it, won't you? Or will you? Okay, but do you see what I'm saying? Marketing is all about turning this next about 7 weeks into roughly 63 days of perpetual excuses to eat under the excuse of it's the holidays. But I count one day, Thanksgiving, and I know exactly where I'm going to be eating that meal. I know it. And I ought not to be eating it elsewhere and the next day and the next day and the next day. Should I, right? I shouldn't. And then the next day is December 25th, right? That's 2 days, 2 feasting days, folks, okay? And then there's January 1st, either a New Year's Eve night party or January 1st. So we'll give it 3, okay? Now, that's 63 days of marketing time versus 3 days.
Wow.
And how many times do you think you're going to wind up getting yourself in a situation where you're going to have to look at how are you going to deal with these seasons in your life, year after year after year after year? What are you going to teach your children? What example are you going to set? So I suggest, if it is a holiday, and that technically means holy day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we revere the wonderfulness of getting with family and the thankfulness, that ought to be that one day that you pick. Where's it going to be? Go visit everyone. You know, go see your family and friends, but you don't have to open your mouth and eat at that bowl of disease, right? Okay, I think we can all get through 3 days spread out over the course of these 63 days, but you can't if you don't have any of these resolutions. And one of the other little videos I did on the Wednesday videos we do every Wednesday morning at 9:45, I said, make your resolution for the year in November. Make all your New Year's resolutions in November. And start out with, if you're going to exercise, start now. Mm-hmm. If you're going to do a dietary change to improve your life, start now. If you are going to create some restriction on when you will and you won't, start now. If you're going to read that book, start opening it up now. Make New Year's resolutions in November. And hopefully a lot of them will be on how you're eating, okay? So the next question, is sugar toxic? Is it addictive?
Yes.
Yes.
What is the audience say? Is everyone saying it's toxic?
Yes.
Really, I'm impressed, okay? Is it addictive?
Yes.
Now, why are you saying sugar is toxic? Anybody?
Well, it'll kill you if you eat enough of it, and white flour also.
It will kill you if you eat enough of it with white flour products, all right? And how do you know that?
Well, I've heard it so much, and now I'm beginning to believe it, and I'm trying to really watch my sugar intake.
Okay, so you've heard about that before. When did you start hearing about sugar and white flour has the potential to be toxic and killing you?
Well, from my family, my nephew is a chiropractor, and he's yeah. So
Okay, your nephew's a chiropractor, and so and good for him.
Yeah.
All right, good for him. I'm proud of that. Any other people, any of you have a reason why you decided sugar was toxic?
Well, the impact with diabetes, the glucose level.
All right, so it's well linked with disease.
Correct.
Lots of diseases, not just diabetes.
And cancer.
And cancer. Okay, all right. My population of patients are an informed patient group. Okay, all right. I'm proud of you. Okay, but now, is it addictive?
Yes.
Yeah.
And why do you say that? Why do you all say, everyone 100% here agrees that sugar is addictive?
Because when you try to give it up, your body just has a really bad reaction. It's almost like coming off any kind of medication. When you stop eating sugar, your body wants it more.
So one in the audience over here says, when you try and get off of sugar, your body has a difficult time giving up like other drugs, okay? Well, do you mean medications, or do you mean like heroin or cocaine?
Anything that's addictive.
All right, so you're saying sugar fits the DMS criteria for addiction through the dependency and the difficulty to withdraw from it, to going back to it. All right, well, we'll look at that. Okay, so do you think the knowledge you gained tonight, and those of you in the internet audience, do you think the knowledge you're going to gain tonight is going to prevent your flu this winter?
Yes.
Yes. I think you'll learn, and hopefully this will help you to prevent your flu. And I hope that you will go home with what we're going to cover tonight, and you will inspire your family and loved ones around you with this knowledge. All right, so the next question we're not going to answer right now, it is sugar a nutrient? Okay, think about that. Is sugar a nutrient? So think about that. So what inspired this seminar? Well, we said we were going to do it on the second Thursday of every month at 7 o'clock. But what inspired the topic of sugar? Well, it's because it's the holidays, and there's going to be a massive consumption worldwide, you know, in treats and the New Year's seasons. And the other thing that inspired this is I have been doing studies for weight loss for my patients. I have many, many diabetics. I have many overweight people. You know, I have many people not active enough. I have high blood pressure, heart disease. I have dementias, Alzheimer patients. I have people with cholesterol problems. I have people with, you know, gout. I have people with multiple medical, even younger women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, okay? Endometriosis, okay? And what are these problems that I'm talking about? Can you think of one? Cancer. I have a lot of patients coming to me for nutritive guidance, immune building that have cancer. What is linking all this topic of disease that I'm bringing up? What links them all together?
It's what you eat.
Well, all right, you jumped to it. You said it's what you eat, but they're all chronic metabolic diseases, right? All right, there's no, you treat it with penicillin and the strep throat goes away, okay? You lance the boil and the infection in the skin goes away. These are all chronic metabolic diseases. And if our behaviors are bringing us to bring ourselves to expose ourselves potentially to sugar, and does it have a link to chronic metabolic diseases? Can we establish this? And I want to tell you, yes, and I'm going to show you that link tonight. And this is information just that came out 1 month ago. So that's another cool thing about this, is we're going to cover really fresh data today. Now, let me give you an example. How many of you go to the Nutcracker once a year or you know, occasionally, and you watch an opera, Aida, Swan Lake, the Nutcracker? How many of you have gone to a play like that? And then, and when they do the play, they honor the author that probably is dead by now, you know, who created Nutcracker or Swan Lake. Well, I'm going to honor an author right now, and he's not dead, and he probably won't die for a long, long time. He's 62 years old right now. He could be my baby brother, okay? And he has done a great service for helping people to understand about the metabolism of sugar. And so when I went to medical school, I went to learn about medicine so that I could teach you and administer the good things I learned in medical school, right? There's some things they should have taught me and they didn't, but we do that. So to repeat information has a nasty term called plagiarism, but to repeat it for training, and it's the truth, you know, if you honor the author of the play or the book or the research on sugar, it's not dishonoring, right? So the author I want to lift up to you, and when you go home and get on your YouTube and you type in Dr. Robert Lustig, 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 okay? And he puts out a call when he does his lectures, and he says that physicians should be teachers, should take this mantle up and share it with everyone. Hence, that is what I'm doing, okay? So I am going to be following this through and repeating much of the concept, because he did a great job in it, on one of his YouTubes called Corporate Wealth or Public Health. Corporate Wealth or Public Health. And he did a great job. This was delivered in England, okay? So he's talking about UK problems and their healthcare system and costs and stuff a bit there, but it applies all here as well. So there is a publication in the magazine, research magazine called Nature, and this was published by an author, a clinician by the name of Zimmet, Z-I-M-M-E-T, Z-I-M-M-E-T, et al. And in this article, which was published in 2001, so we're talking 18 years old, they looked at the prevalence and projected that on the disease of diabetes. Do you think diabetes is an issue that we should have a concern with, folks here?
Yeah,
You do? Why?
because it's worldwide now and it's getting worse.
It's worldwide and it's getting worse. Does anyone have an argument with that? We have about, 7.2 billion people on the planet right now. All right, so what he did is he looked at type 2 diabetes, and it's the fact that it is increasing exponentially. He took a world map and he showed the continents, and he put numbers on each continent of the relative population and their percent of diabetes starting back in 2000. Everyone's with me? Mm-hmm. And then he made a projection. Projections were made with the way things are. We have to ask that question, what's going on? Would the number of diabetics in each of the continents and nations go up? And the prediction was, yes, it would. And here's the prediction. In 2000, there was about 151 million diabetics, type 2, worldwide. And they said by 2010, they predicted that there would be 221 million type 2 diabetics worldwide, okay? Which is a 3.8% increase over those 10 years, okay? 3.8% increase. But we've already passed 2010, haven't we? And so we already know the true numbers, a very close estimate. You want to know what they are? The actual is there's 285,000 of type 2 diabetics. That's more than a doubling of the percentage. That's a 6.5% increase. It's doubled what was predicted. Doubled what was predicted. And by the way, they just re-looked at it, and they looked at it up to 2014. And now the number of type 2 diabetics worldwide is 422 million, more than the population of the United States of America, way more, are diabetics. And that's a 10.3 increase. Now, do you see a problem, folks?
Yeah.
Do you see a problem? We've got to solve this, don't you? Don't you see? Okay, so the British Journal of Medicine in 2019, so this is current, and this was published in April 18 of 2019, so just a few months ago, all right? And there are physicians in healthcare, and your relative who's a chiropractor, we're starting to look at these problems and address them. And the article was about, are we going to solve this problem with pills? I mean, are we going to give more metformin, more Actos, more insulin? Are we going to solve this chronic metabolic disease with more blood pressure pills and heart pills, cholesterol-lowering pills? Because you know the diabetic has high blood pressure. They have more vascular disease. You know they have lipid problems. So we'll give them more statins. We'll give them more blood pressure for their heart. We'll give them more medicines for their diabetes lowering. Is that the solution? That's what the article is asking here, and that was published in the British Journal of Medicine. Her name was Fiona Godlee, Godlee. That was the editor-in-chief of the British Journal of Medicine article. And so her argument was this: treatment is not treatment. We have to find a way to stop this. We have to find a way to stop this, because treatment is not treating the disease. All right, so if we think that we can stop this rising trend of diabetes, which we've established is growing exponentially, right, through treatment, it's already a failure. There is a study out there published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Internal Medicine, and this was done in 2017 by a Dr. Haw, H-A-W, And what he did is he did a meta-analysis of type 2 diabetics. Okay, so he's looking at a lot of studies. Okay, and these type 2 diabetics were stratified into treatment groups. One, they came up with a lifestyle proposal. Let's change their lifestyle. We do that here, okay? And then they had another arm that got the prescription medicine management. How many of you here know someone with diabetes and they're on a medicine? Does it help them?
No.
Well, it does a little bit. I mean, give the medicine a little bit of value, right? They're getting some medicine, they're getting some benefit. They're not going into a diabetic coma, So the medicine has some value, right? Can you give me that much? Okay. But what was interesting is the lifestyle proposed helped a little bit. Anybody of you know a diabetic with lifestyle changes that was helped?
Mhm.
All right, yes, I know a lot of them because I'm doing that. Okay. And in their study, the improvement of the drug managed treated diabetics of type 2 diabetes and the improvement of the lifestyle treated diabetics both improved about similarly. And then you have to look deep into the study and you say, well, what lifestyle were you doing? And then how many of you know that we all have dietitians and nutritional counselors, and they're in the hospitals, and we have exercise therapists and personal trainers, and we are having all these things. Wouldn't you want a diabetic to exercise more? Would you want them to see a nutritionist? Well, they all got that, okay? And they all got, their dietary advice. If diabetes is growing exponentially worldwide, are the dietitians helping us? Are they helping anybody? Are they slowing this rate down? Is their advice solving the problem? Apparently not. Maybe their training is wrong. Maybe the training of the physician is wrong, just like Dr. Godley was saying. Maybe the doctor isn't motivated either, to sit up and burn the midnight oil and do some studying. I am not paid to do research or lectures like this. I get nothing for this. But I have loved ones that I care about. They're my patients too. Okay. We've unfortunately created a two-tier system. 100 years ago, I would say every doctor had their own lab. When I went through medical school, I was with some of the old doctors who were trained in the 19-teens and 20s, So in the 1970s, when I was in training, the doctors I was with, these men, they were probably my age now. I'm 66. So if they were 66 and I was 22, right, 23, that's a 4 year difference. So these guys probably were trained, subtract 40 from 70s, 1930s. And they would do rectal exams, and there were no latex gloves. And you know how we did it back then? It was new to have latex pretty much then. We would scratch soap to get soap under our fingernails, and then we would do the exam. The other thing is, very often physicians, in the old days tasted the urine, for sweetness. In the real old days, yeah, that's a true statement. I knew how to do the gram staining for gonorrhea and stuff like this. I used to work in the county hospital in the 70s and do my scrapings, and then I would light a candle and I would put the candle to get rid of all the oxygen, a quart jar over it. Then I'd put my Petri dish there because, certain sexually transmitted diseases have to be in an oxygen-free environment, for being moved around. I mean, I'm from the old school, folks. We did it like that. But anyway, so what I'm getting at is when you're a doctor that knows how to do science, then you can't stop doing science. You got to look. You got to find out more, okay? But when you're trained today and you expect a certain club of doctors who get a certain pay and prestige and a prestigious pinnacle of medicine training, and they're supposed to trickle down to you and give you protocols to have, me teach you what to do. And you don't second guess it when you see diabetes rising like that. There's something wrong with the doctor who just accepts the protocols that are failing. And there's something wrong with the system that doesn't make and inspire a doctor to love their patients so much that they wouldn't open up a book and spend, hours reading or listening. Right. Okay. All right. So we got to speed up here a little bit. So anyway, we have a problem with that. Now, an interesting thing is you might think that everybody in that study, when they created the study on the diabetics, the ones who were treated with drugs and got some help, the one with lifestyle and got some help, you might think they all improved. Do you think every diabetic improves if we put you on a drug or we say you should eat a certain diet and exercise? Do you think they all improve? No. Do you know the number needed to treat in this study to have a good value was only 1 out of 25 patients?
Yeah.
Only 1 in 25, and this is publishable. I wouldn't put my name on a paper, if I thought, well, only 1 in 25 were benefited. But anyway, all right, so we have to fix this problem, and we have to find out what the problem is, right? So first we got to ask, what's the problem? What do you think the problem is? What do you think the problem is?
Food we eat.
The food we eat? Do I have a second? Do I have a third?
Yes.
Do we have any naysayers? You all agree? All right. I agree too. I think it's in the food. So let's see if we can prove that it's the food. So I want to point out there is something wrong with the food that we're eating. And what they did in one of these studies, and I'll show you this on a scattergram. One of these studies was done by a Dr. Basu, B-A-S-U, et al. And he published this in 2013. And what we had was in this study, I'm just going to give you a scattergram. How many of you know what a scattergram is? Scattergram is you take a bunch of data points and you're measuring things and you get a cluster where a lot of these things are at, but you have some outliers. But you get a lot of here. And so this is a scattergram, okay? So this is just data points put on a piece of paper regarding the, let's say, the number of patients with diabetes, okay? Diabetes type 2, okay? And the obese. Okay, do you all make sense here? Number of patients. Now, does there appears to be a line here. Would you all agree with me?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to do some explaining here about these people, don't you? And you got to do some explaining about these people in this group here. So what is this scattergram about? Just sampling and studying people. And you see that some people have obesity, and some people here have diabetes, but no obesity. All right. So this is your weight going up, and this is your, prevalence of blood sugar diabetes. So do you see what this diagram is showing us? So we're just sampling all kinds of patients that I ever see or anyone in this study. And we find that, we see a big grouping here, and there seems to be some relationship between the blood sugar and their weight. However, there are some people in the world, and these are representatives worldwide, okay? So this is not just one doctor's clinic, this is worldwide, the prevalence of this. And they found that there are some nations that tend to have diabetes without being overweight, like in Micronesia, okay, and other places. And there are some places that tend to be obese without having diabetes. So Micronesia is what I flipped it. The Micronesia people had the obesity and Icelanders, and it was China the UK, and another place that really stood out as not being obese, and they had a lot of diabetes, okay? So in China, large population, a huge number of those people are diabetics, a huge number. That number is 11.4% of the population, but they're not fat. They're not fat in China, okay? And India, okay? They're not fat. They're not big fat Chinese and Indian people, but they're diabetics, 11.4%. And in the other arm, well, let's talk about the United States. Our prevalence of diabetes is 9.4%. And yet America as a nation is the fattest nation in the world, okay? So how do you explain that? How do you say that there are more diabetics in the world totally at this given moment? Because we looked at the world scattergram and trends. We looked at all that, didn't we? Right? How do you explain that there are more diabetics in China, India, but they're not obese, okay? And yet Americans are the most obese, and we don't have as much diabetics. We're only 9.4 prevalence. How do you explain that?
Our food is more processed that they're eating.
Well, they have rice. They have Coca-Cola machines in China. They have, treats out there too. So I'm going to propose to you that this problem is, I'm trying to get you to see that it's not the obesity. I'm trying to get you to realize that there are some people overweight and obese who are not diabetics or necessarily sick. All right? So worldwide increase in obesity is at a rate of 2.78% worldwide. That's another statistics put out by Lancet for October 2017. 2.78 of the rate of increase in obesity, fat people, worldwide, is 2.78%. But the rate of diabetes worldwide percent increase annually is 4.07. So there's more diabetics becoming than there are obese becoming. So are you going to look at that obese person and say, you must be a diabetic with blood sugar problems, right? But that's what we often do, don't we? Don't we? Let's look at another example, a Venn diagram. Let's do it over here. Let's say this is the United States has 242 million roughly adults, okay, grown-ups, okay? And in this, let's say these are the adults that are not obese, and let's say these are the adults that are obese, okay? Roughly 70% of Americans are still not fitting they might be overweight, but they're not obese yet, okay? And we're saying roughly 30% of these people are obese. They fit the criteria for obesity. Now, when we look at that, we can see that there's roughly in the fat, so we're going to say these are the fat or obese. And we're going to say these are the non-fat. 70%, 30%. So in this 30%, we look at those diabetics, or those obese people, and we think they have diabetes often, don't we? We think they have disease. You're sick, right? You're overweight. What's wrong with you, right? So it is true that about 80% of people who are obese, okay, have all of these metabolic diseases. They probably have high blood pressure. They probably have diabetes. They probably have dyslipidemias. They probably have polycystic ovarian syndrome. They probably have some coronary artery disease, right? They have some chronic medical problems and diabetes, right? Yes? Mm-hmm. Do we all agree? Mm-hmm. And if you ask, let's see, How many million of those is 80% of 240 million? That'd be 168 and 72. 168 million and 72 million. So if there's roughly 42 million adults, 168 of them are non-fat, 72 million are obese. Of the 72 million who are obese, that's 30% of the population. 80% of the 72 million have chronic disease. So we're going to write chronic disease, like type 2 diabetes mellitus, but it could be hypertension, it could be polycystic ovarian syndrome. And then what is that number of people? What is 80% of 72 million? 57 million people that are sick. And don't you think that these people are driving up all the costs of healthcare in the United States? You know, we're having all these debates with the elections. How are we going to take care of this? We already know it's exponentially rising. Don't we think these people are responsible?
Right.
Gotcha. They're not. Yes, sir.
I have a question. In these studies, how is obesity defined?
It is defined differently in different countries, okay? But it's usually by your basal metabolic index, you know, which is anything above 30%. Yeah.
So it's these charts, height, weight charts?
Right, in general. But the fact actually is that not all the people that are non-fat, do you know someone who is not fat and has high blood pressure?
Yes.
Do you know someone who's not fat who has diabetes?
Yes.
Do you know someone who's not fat and has heart disease, a heart attack? Do you know someone who's not fat and they have polycystic ovarian syndrome? Do you know someone who's not fat and they have dementia?
Yeah.
You know? Do you know someone who's not fat and they have gout? Yeah, so there is problem in the healthy group, and we know that 40% of the 70% also has chronic disease.
They have both, sorry. They fall in both categories?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're looking at type 2 diabetes, but all chronic disease, okay? I just made the suggestion that you think because someone's overweight, they have blood sugar problems, right? Right? But we know there are thin people who have blood sugar problems. Now, what's 40% of 168 million? 67 million. This is 67 million. Now, these 67 million people are looking at these 57 million people and blaming them for the whole problem of the healthcare cost system. That's not right. They're part of the problem too. So we have a problem, don't we? Which group are you in? Are you in the non-obese group, or are you in the 30% obese? Because obviously there is a group of people overweight who look overweight to you who are metabolically wonderfully healthy. They don't contribute one dime to the cost of healthcare. They stay well, they're off drugs, they're active, they stay busy, but they're overweight in your opinion, okay? That's this group right here. Right? All right, so worldwide, of all the people with diabetes, if we correlate diabetes with weight, we can find the fact that some people who are overweight don't have diabetes, and some people who are thin do have diabetes. And it turns out there's more people that are thin with diabetes. And this is another way of looking at it. And there are more people like this out there.
What countries are those people that are
Well, there's
thin?
205 countries, I think, currently,
The
and there's
majority of those that are thin. that are.
I'd have to open up the article
I
again.
know, it's kind of dissected.
I don't have the answer to you right
I'm
here.
just wondering about air quality.
Well, there's many factors, but what I at least want to extract out of here, that yes, there's pollution in the world stressing our health, no doubt, okay? But we look at people and we judge them, and we're talking about a healthcare problem, and I need to find the answer, all right? And is it air pollution? Okay, we got to find the answer. So we know that there are more thin, sick people in America than there are fat, sick people. Now, another thing, there's a name for this group of people that are the healthy, overweight people. They're called MHOs, metabolically healthy obese, okay? Metabolically healthy obese. But then we have a name for this group here, and they're called TOFI people, all right? Thin on the outside, fat on the inside. Thin on the outside, fat on the inside, TOFI people. Are you a TOFI? All right, so what we want to do is, does your doctor even know what you are? Does your doctor even look at this at all? Because there seems to be a huge, millions and millions and millions of people. What? So this is 129 million people who are pretty darn sick on their way to just treatment, chronic care in this country. And we know that the number's just rising. All right? So there's a problem here. How many of you are aware that insulin is the hormone called forth when you take in a starch, a carbohydrate, a sugar, a fruit sugar? Well, not a fruit sugar. How many of you are aware that insulin rises when you take in carbohydrates, right? Yeah. And so insulin seems to be the metabolism of how you respond to sugars in the diabetic. Glucose, okay, seems to be a problem, and maybe the hormone insulin is, okay? I want to make a suggestion to you that might actually be another thing. It isn't just being fat, and insulin promotes fat cells to grow. We know insulin promotes fat cells to grow, right? We all agree on that. But there's actually another thing we see here, and that is that the liver of the diabetic tends to store fat, right? Have you heard of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? Have you heard of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, the fatty liver? All right, so raise your hands if you're familiar with this. All right, so half of you. All right. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is what's really killing our children today. And that's through their high consumption of carbohydrates. And we're doing transplants now more for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, hurt livers, than we are for hepatitis C, you know. So we're doing more liver transplants for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease today in America than for hepatitis C, you know, an infection that used to be a concern, okay? So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, the bodies of diabetics and the TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside, people tend to have fat accumulating in their liver. So you might be a TOFI with a fatty liver, but you don't look fat yet, okay? So there are ways we could do an ultrasound, or we could do an MRI, and we could look at you, and we could see a picture of, if we cut you in half, if I just cut you right in half here, okay, and we know my liver's on the right side. So if we cut me in half, and then I show you the cross section of my bottom here, that's what I'm going to draw here very simplistically. All right, so here is somebody laying down, their torso, and your feet are here and you're looking up there. And so here's where the liver is, right? And the spleen is here, and your bones are here, and your Right? Everyone with me on that? Well, if you're looking at an ultrasound or you're looking at an MRI CT, fat looks light, okay? It looks whiter than muscle. Let's say this is some of the muscle that is in this guy's latissimus on each side, okay? So he's got nice muscle there, okay? And let's say this guy has skin here, and here's his skin, and it looks like he only has so much fat, just a little bit of fat. This would be a tophi. So this is a sick, thin person. And this is what we look for on an ultrasound. Now this, let's say this person is fat. We're giving a lot of subcutaneous fat. So we're looking up his body. That's his liver on the right. But his liver looks dark on the CT scan, all right? Because it's solid, it's full of proteins and all the structure of the meat of the liver, okay? It's a nice big piece of meaty liver. This one's a flabby, fatty liver, okay? So this would be your metabolically healthy, obese person. So this is a healthy, fat person, okay? This is a sick, thin person, all right? You need to get familiar with this. Any questions on that?
Are you going to explain the reason that some?
Yeah, all right, so let's get to the reason why that happens. And let's go to another diagram to do it. Let's talk about the difference between sugar, alcohol, and sugar is really made up of two molecules, right? It's a molecule of glucose and a molecule of glucose, right? It's a dimer. It's two molecules, right? Sugar, sucrose, your white stuff on your table, is made of two molecules. One is glucose, one is fructose, and ethanol. And we're going to talk about that. Let me copy this here and give you three examples. Let's do glucose metabolism. Here's glucose inside a cell. Here's the mitochondria, the engine with its little cristae where we make energy. And we'll say we're going to put in 100 calories and of glucose here. And then it's going to go in and a lot of metabolism down to pyruvate. And then it's going to store some of this as glycogen. Okay, how many of you have heard of glycogen, storing some sugar in your liver so those runners can have something to burn up when they're running so much, okay? So glycogen is made a lot. Then there could be a little bit of very low density lipoprotein, a triglyceride or something made. And this is the liver cell. And that's what happened when you put in glucose, okay? Now, let's look at a cell when it has alcohol, okay? This is alcohol. It also is a fuel, and alcohol, 80% is processed in the liver, whereas 100 calories, we're going to say only 20% is processed in the liver. Where did the other 80% of the glucose go? It went to your brain, to your muscles, to your metabolism. So 80% is burnt up or used in other parts of your body. Every part of your body can use glucose, right? Everybody can use, part of your body can use glucose. But alcohol, can every part of your body metabolize alcohol? No, and most of it is processed. 80% of every 100 calories you put in goes into your liver, folks, okay? And it's metabolized down to acetate. That's how they get that funny, funky smell, okay? And here's the mitochondria. And then what happens is, do you see any go to glycogen from alcohol? Do we store glycogen from alcohol? No, there's none. It turns into fat droplets in the liver cell, and it pours out fat droplets, triglycerides, into your bloodstream. That's why you get that high triglyceride level if you're an alcoholic, okay? Now, let's talk about fructose. And again, 100% of fructose is only metabolized in the liver. There is no place in the body where your body burns fructose, fruit sugar. Not one cell. What do you call something if only the liver processes it? You call it a toxin. If only the liver can handle a piece of something, it's a toxin. If it doesn't get burnt in your body for other things. And we call alcohol a toxin, don't we? Because its negative effects on the CNS, you can become quickly intoxicated because some will go in the intestine, some in the brain, and there's a limit there. So it's a toxin, okay? So here is fructose. And 100% has to go into the liver cell. And here's the mitochondria with its little cristae to make energy off of. And then these are all liver cells. This is a liver cell. And what happens then, it goes to pyruvate also. But it is largely turned into fat. And fat pours out. Very low density lipoproteins pours out of it. Now, here with this is where we see insulin resistance. This is where we see high lipids. The high lipid goes up, the cholesterol and things like this. This is where we see the sugar will go up. It'll mess up sugar metabolism. This is where we see gout. This is where we can see hypertension. This is where we can see, now you can see diseases with alcohol too, acutely, but you can also see chronic problem in the chronic alcoholic, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And then he too can get high blood pressure and he can get other diseases, okay? So I want to show you sugar, glucose is the half of that sugar molecule. Only 20% is dealt with the liver. 80% is used in the body. Much of that is useful as storage glycogen, and very little goes out to harm your body and blood fats. Alcohol messes up your mind. 80% goes in and promotes fat, no glycogen, and large amounts of fat are generated from this, especially if you keep on taking an alcohol. And then fructose, 100% goes into the cell, and only fatty and damage to cell membranes occur. So what do you call fructose?
That's like fruit sugar, right?
Yeah, what do you call fructose then?
Poison.
Poison, yeah. And if a sugar molecule is glucose and fructose, and that's a 50-50 relationship, that's your sucrose, your cane sugar, beet sugar, right? That's what you're giving your children, folks. In apple juices and all their candies and treats and their gummies and their juju beans and their all that. You're giving them all that 50% of toxin every time you give your child, your grandchild, a Coca-Cola, okay? You're poisoning your kids, all right? Now, on top of that, in the 1970s, they made high fructose corn syrup. So now it's 45% glucose and 55% fructose. Do you see a problem here, folks? Yeah.
With the hybridization of fruit, the fruit today is far more sweeter than it was in the past.
Yes, it's much sweeter.
So eating fresh fruit on a consistent basis would have that same impact.
It would, and the fruit we have today is far sweeter than the fruits that used to be years ago through breeding, and the nutrient density has dropped dramatically, and the sugar, sweet taste. It's all about marketing, folks. It's all about getting you to eat this stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about, do I have proof where in that cell membrane, where in the cell is the damage done that shifts to fat being burned, okay? Do we have proof? And that's the new data that just came out. And what I want to point out is there is an article, and Dr. Lustig was on this article, and it was published in the magazine Obesity, okay? And in this magazine, in 2016, Dr. Robert Lustig is a pediatric neuroendocrinologist up in San Francisco, and he runs children's studies on metabolic endocrinology type disorders. So they selected out of his patient population children who were put on government WIC programs, women, infant, child, the sponsored stuff. And what do you see people who get WIC? They're usually poor socioeconomically, right? And they'll go to the store and they load up on Cheerios, Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms and soda pop and orange juice and all these kind of things, don't they? Right? All right, so all these kids were obese, okay? He had about 50 kids, and all of them were diagnosed with this chronic metabolic disorder, making them fat. They were all obese. They all had this chronic metabolic problem with their insulin resistance and higher trends for blood sugar, and they had the higher cholesterol, lipid, hypertriglyceridemia, and they had non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. All of them. They all had non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So you know what he did in just 9 days? In 9 days, he and the team there had all these kids' food catered to them, all their meals. And they kept it kid meals. It wasn't like they went out and they got organic food. No, they took all the fructose out because, and that's why I have these up here. I just grabbed in my house, I don't have a lot of junk food, but I did have this mushroom soup by Campbell's. There's no listing of the impact of sugar on any can of food in the United States. They'll talk about the value of the other things like sodium and your fats and proteins, but they won't put a thing on sugar. And if you doubt, come up at the end and look at the can, and then you go home and you look at your food. Let's pick another one. And here again, I look at sugars, and there's no percent of value. No value here, zero. Nothing's there. So if nothing's said, it must not be bad, especially to kids on WIC. Here's another one. Sugars, nothing is written here. Nothing is on the label, nothing. All right, so what happened to these kids in 9 days? So what they did is, instead of them giving them teriyaki chicken, you know how you go to the McDonald's and you put those sugar dips on the chicken nuggets? Instead of teriyaki chicken, they gave them turkey hot dogs, okay? Kid food. Instead of giving them croissants or Cinnabons or something like that, they gave them a bagel, okay? No fruit, sugar in it. That was standard starch. Instead of giving them candies and stuff, they gave them a piece of fruit, limited, okay? With all the fiber in it. That makes a large world of difference. So in other words, They took out all the sugar in the processed food that they're getting tons of. They reduced it from 38% to 10%. That's about 350 to 400 calories per child per day. And they didn't want these kids to lose weight. And so they measured their weight every day. And if they saw that their weight was going down, they said, eat more hot dogs or eat more bagel. Okay, so they kept their weight the same, 9 days, okay? And what they found in those 9 days, when they retested their blood, they found that 50% of their liver fats diminished. 50% of that fatty stuff in there went away in 9 days. Just by taking the fructose, sugar, added sugar out of their processed foods. They kept it kid food. They didn't make it great food. They just took the fructose out. Then the liver fat. Yeah.
Make sure you go to 8 o'clock.
Okay. The liver fat dropped 22%. The liver fat dropped 22%, and the new lipids that those little cells were making, all those fats that their cells were making into the blood, that dropped 50%. Okay, and the liver fat dropped 22%. And then what else? They found that the insulin sensitivity went up. Okay, and then they found what else? Liver lipids down 50%, liver fats down 22%, triglycerides down 46%, insulin sensitivity up. In 9 days, folks, just by taking the sugar fructose out of their added foods. Now, another study was done in atherosclerosis in 2016, and they looked at inflammatory markers with this study. And the inflammatory cytokines went down that injure the membranes, that injure the mitochondria and the cell membranes here. Okay, so these free radicals from the stress of it all. Then gastroenterology did a study and published this in 2017 and basically found the reduction in the non-alcoholic fatty liver in them. And then in JAMA, this was just last few months ago, 2019. Basically, it's been proven over and over and over and over again. The benefits of just taking the sugar out, eliminating fructose essentially, and having the same calories and the same metabolism. And so what they really did is they let starch be in their diet with the bagel. Okay, they let the starch be in to have the same amount of calories. Okay, because starch doesn't have any fructose in it. That's just links of glucose molecules, like in a potato, right? All right. So we have, in these 4 studies, we've proved that sugar is the problem. That sugar that has the poor mom nothing is said about the sugar there, okay, the added sugar. And so about, I don't know the exact percentages, but less than 50% of the total calories consumed in processed foods are from candies and ice cream and sodas. The other 50% really comes in regular foods. You're feeding the kids every day and they think it's their food. Do you know the sugar is added to the buns today at restaurants, okay? To make them taste better, to caramelize the top when they bake the buns. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much added sugar is in there. So let's draw a picture of added sugar. Let's draw that real quick. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back with U.S. Commerce, and we're going to go back. Let's see, the average 150 pounds of sugar is what the average American's doing. And let's put it down to almost 0 here. And then let's go out to 2010. And then let's make this the year 1822. And then we're going to say this is 75 pounds of sugar. And this is maybe 5 to 0 pounds down here in the 1980s, 1982. And as time goes on, let's put this here at 1980. Let's put this at 1960s, 1940, 1920. Let's put this here at 1880. All right, so the sugar industry was very low in increasing. Then when we get to about World War II, you'll see we're about at 75 pounds per capita per person. And then World War II hits in here. Oh, by the way, in 1860, that was the Civil War. There was a drop. So whenever there's war, there's less out there and people get healthier. Whenever there's war, people get healthier. Okay. But anyway, so then there was like a stable time here. But then we got what is called in 1977 high fructose corn syrup, and we started seeing a rise, and processed foods like Coca-Colas, and everyone was getting it. And then we saw this tremendous rise, okay? So we have seen since 1822 to 2010, times of Civil War and World War II, there was about a stabilization of the consumption and what was going on at about 75 pounds the worst. But when high fructose corn syrup and processed foods were admitted into the system, additives, then we started to see the skyrocketing. So if I superimpose the healthcare costs, the total costs, what do you think the total healthcare costs per year, the gross income of the food industry is? It's $1.46 trillion a year. That's the processed foods, you know, your donuts and all. 1.46 trillion a year, and their profit is $657 billion. And this is creating chronic metabolic disease. Now, there's something even more interesting. Just recently, in May of 2019, there was an article published by Arkin and Kekmak in the Journal of Endocrinology Metabolism. By reducing fructose, restricting the fructose in the obese kids, okay, they did a study and they found the metabolite of fructose that's harming you. You want to know what that metabolite is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big hot news. Here's that news. And you're hearing it here first. Inside of that mitochondria, here's that mitochondria, right, where we had those little cristae, right? That's, you know, the fructose goes in, or the alcohol, or the glucose, and it goes into the cell, and it has to go through the Krebs cycle, okay, right? And we get ATP energy made from it, right? Energy, right? You all know about this roughly. You all know about this. When this comes in, there's a very special enzyme in here called AMP kinase. It is probably close to the golden ring of metabolism. This is your master regulator. Master regulator. And it's related to all disease. This thing here, cyclic AMP kinase enzyme, is either going to turn the fuel you're sending in, be it alcohol or fruit sugar or glucose, it's either going to turn it in to benefit you or it's going to turn it in to harm you. So if it's going to benefit you, that enzyme inside your mitochondrial engines are going to help you burn your sugar and you don't become a diabetic, right? It's going to help you burn your fat so you don't gain weight. It's going to help you burn nitric or generate nitric oxide, which helps dilate your blood vessels. It's going to help you with the biogenesis of the mitochondria. It literally helps more mitochondria be made for more energy and enduring, right? And it helps the uptake of glucose, and it helps when the cell is too damaged to promote cell death. Are you starting to think about cancer here, folks, in the high carb person? It helps to promote killing off the cell when it's too old, okay? But if you take in fructose, there is a metabolite, they're breaking, messing up of that fruit sugar into a 5-carbon ring and breaking it down. It will harm that thing, and it'll start making, I won't write it down, it'll start making you make new fat. Remember the fat molecules I was showing you here? The new fat? So this fat, the fat, making the fat in your liver. So it's going to, lipogenesis, de novo, new fat. It's going to make cholesterol. It's going to start making things grow. Think cancer, folks. So either the carbon atoms in that molecule of glucose or fructose, those carbon atoms are either going to be used to help you with energy, make ATP, or they can grow a tumor, promote tumor growth. Is that not exciting? And it has a name now. This name of this metabolite is called, what is it called? Methyl glyoxal. So the metabolite of this bad fructose that's harming your cyclic AMP in the engine of your cells is called methyl glyoxal. G-L-Y-O-X-A-L. And that's metabolized to D-lactate. And guess what we found in kids who had the fructose taken out, we measured their fructose metabolism. They had high D-lactate levels, which is the metabolite of this thing. This is hard to measure. So its metabolite is D-lactate. So these fat kids all had a high D-lactate. But when they took the fructose out, 9 days later, it dropped something like 40% in 9 days. That means they're machines, and they were, more energetic and thinking better, and they were happier kids. So we've done that. We have shown you the metabolite of fructose that proves it's a toxin and turns very bad things on happening to you. And there is a problem in River City. It's if we overlay this chart of sugar consumption, this was the sugar consumption. Now let's put the cost of healthcare over this, okay, the dollars. And so if you do that, you will see the cost of healthcare in the United States basically started rising at the inception of high fructose corn syrup and processed foods, added sugar, high fructose corn syrup. To the tune of, the annual cost that we spend in the United States for healthcare is $3.5 trillion. And the food industry grosses $1.46 trillion. They make a profit of 45%, or $657 billion. Pharma, big pharma, has an 18% profit. Who's the real bully here? Is it really the drug companies? Maybe it's the food industry. The tobacco industry, its biggest annual income was $56 billion. Food is $1.46 trillion. The profit of $657 billion. Healthcare costs $3.5 trillion, folks, and it's all on the damage of the introduction of high fructose corn syrup and processed sugar, adding sugar. Because what did they do in 1980s? They told you that fat was bad. And when you take fat out of the food, the only way you can make people eat it and buy it is put a bunch of sugar in it. Right? This is where all the chronic metabolic diseases are coming from. All of them. They're all related to the engine failure through the damage of your cyclic AMP. AMP kinase. It's an enzyme. Okay? So we have a problem in River City. So all disease is going to manifest itself as oxidative stress. We're going to create all these free radicals, choking up your blood with all this fat pouring in it, messing up your engines. You're going to have, oh, by the way, I didn't tell you this. Glucose, if glucose sticking to you just from having too much is called hemoglobin A1C, and that we'll call 1. Fructose is 8 times more likely to stick to you. right? All right, that's called glycation. That's called a Maillard reaction. That's where there's so much sugar, it sticks to the protein, all right? And it gums you up. Fructose is 8 times more. This is 250 times more sticky. And that's why people with, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease get so sick and need liver transplants, and it's now more than for disease hepatitis C. So there was an interesting, we'll do a wrap-up article here. We'll say 75% of this cost here is known to be for chronic disease. 75% of $3.5 trillion a year is spent on chronic metabolic problems, of which we can identify now the vector and the agent.
And that's what can control.
Yeah.
Is control our diet.
Well, can you, if you have a company that's lying, like think about the tobacco industries in the 60s and 70s, saying, our science is clear, it's not our problem, Well, the public is going to go whoop-de-doo. But eventually some bold scientists stepped out and said, it's the nicotine, it's the cigarette, it's smoking, idiots causing the cancer. And now no one second guessed that. But you can't make an informed decision unless we do talks like this. And we point out that the labeling is lousy. And I suggest we do something like tax sugar, tax this stuff. Get the government out of this WIC stuff or something, because they're promoting these poor kids to eat this crap. So the cell is damaged through oxidative stress, the glycation, the engine, mitochondria is injured, the insulin resistance is there because it is addictive. There are studies proving it. I don't have time to show it. And this creates inflammation, okay? We all know that. And then the membranes are useless. And so I think one of the interesting things I want to point out that the industry, where is this article? Here it is. The industry lies to us. Okay, here it is. The Journal of the American Medical Association, current September 12, 2016, the title of the article was Sugar Industry and Coronary Heart Disease Research, a Historical Analysis of Internal Industry Documents. Industry documents, and here's one of the quotes. The sugar industry, the Sugar Research Foundation in the 1960s was created and sponsored the first ever coronary heart disease research project in 1965. Oh, gee, I wonder why. Maybe they had vested interest that you buy their product. And they got published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Do you think someone was bought off? Yeah, his name was Steers. And they singled out in these publications that it was fat and cholesterol that caused heart disease. So they had the bully pulpit and they yelled it at you. And if you weren't like my dad never fell for that knowledge, okay? So they downplayed the evidence that sugar had this deleterious effect. They knew it back then, folks. How many of your friends have cancer, diabetes, fat kids, non-alcoholic fatty liver, high blood pressure, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, dementia? And they knew it. And then I could do a whole nother lecture on the cooperation of the FDA and the U.S. agriculture, all looking the other way, and people getting scientific appointments, and putting on boards, if they'll kind of maybe write their letter saying, I don't see any clear-cut disease, okay? I don't see a clear-cut, okay? So we have a problem in River City. It's worldwide now. The world can't sustain a escalating diabetes, okay? It's in the thin person too, so don't blame just fat people. And it isn't just being a diabetic. Being obese is one of the markers of a chronic metabolic problem in your mitochondria from the damaging fuel you're feeding it, messing up your critical enzymatic engines in there. And you either turn on for repair, and break down sugar and break down fat, or you build bad tumors and things like that, Yes.
How can we repair that, is that the Krebs cycle?
Yeah.
I mean, and like.
Well, you're gonna have to get all the fruit sugar out of your diet,
Sure,
okay?
you
Well, eat real food. Well, what I do is we created a bar, remember? We did on that cell membrane, here it is. Here's the cell membrane made of phospholipids, essential fats and protein and cholesterol. Here is a picture of a damaged membrane, okay? That could be the mitochondrial membrane, the cristae. It could be the outer membrane of the cell, all damaged by these free radicals generated. But they're all made of phospholipids, okay? And they've made you afraid to eat fat. So we created a really proven phospholipid-rich, healthy bar, full of fiber that helps lower blood sugar absorption, full of protein, and the fats that repair you. So here's one way. And then we also put it in a powder, okay? So we put this in the powder, and this is what we put in these bars. And we did the research on it. So we have our own white paper. So I'm trying to do my part. And how many years have I been saying, cut the carbs, right? Right? Decades, long before these lectures came out, long before Gary Taub's book on good carbs, bad carbs, right? I've been doing low carbs for 30, 40 years. All right, then the other thing is the very fat, they're tricking you into eating fish oil, okay? Fish oil. No, this is linoleic acid, folks. And I had to go find a company that gives you the only two human essential fatty acids, linoleic and alpha linoleic acid. And I got that. If these are the two human essential fatty acids, you can make all the EPA and all the DHA you need from the two essential fatty acids. And that's if you eat animal products and egg yolks, you know, chicken, fish, you know, beef. These things, and the egg yolks, and some nuts and seeds. And you can make all the EPA and DHA you need. But you're going to mess it up every single time and inflame it and oxidize it if you take in too much carbohydrate from the fructose part of the sugar molecule. So we teach this here. We teach these things about these essential fats to repair your cell membranes. So we use these essential fats, and we research them and publish on this, like this. Then the other thing is when an incoming hit comes, a free radical is coming in to harm that cell membrane. The most documented research antioxidant series is the Juice Plus series. There's just nothing that can beat the research, so we recommend our patients do that. Then, if you have a damaged item so damaged that you can't repair it, okay? Then we're going to help your AMP kinase to go into autophagy, and when the fragments are there, and there's the fragments, you can see the fragments, we use enzymes to help clean it out. Enzymes to help clean it out. And we do research on these enzymes, okay? And then we always tell you every time you see us, drink the water, right? And then move, do some exercise. And then lastly, you know where Aptos and metformin, those new medicines, work on in your cell? By the way, they work to promote a healthy AMP kinase enzyme. They work to promote this key regulator, AMP kinase. So guess what? Resveratrol, which is rich in this, all right, rich in this, helps that enzyme. Turmeric, berberine, okay? So I created a berberine alpha lipoic to help the fatty liver clean out, cinnamon, vanadium, chromium, biotin, vitamin C, to all things known to help this, all right? So we're helping our patients repair their cell membranes. This is called TLC metabolic. I take this every day of my life, and I don't drink. Or I'll have a glass of wine at Christmas or something. But, and then we do chelation therapy, because when things are clogged up, to reach the tiniest cells, you gotta have a very good way to reach those membranes. So there you have it, folks. I think I've answered all these questions. So How many days are you going to feast now? I'm going to stick to 3 and no more. 3 and no more. Is sugar toxic? Have we proven it? Is there research behind there? Did I present it to you? All right. Will the knowledge you gain tonight prevent your flu this winter?
Yes.
Yes, it will. It'll help your whole immune system stop wreaking all those free radicals. So is sugar a nutrient? No, it's an energy. It has some energy, just like alcohol has some energy value to it, but it has no nutrients in it. I don't think we should have it. It's an ultra refined product from the cane and from the beet, plants out there. Is type 2 diabetes rising exponentially? Can medical doctors drug away type 2 diabetes into extinction or any chronic metabolic problem? Does the medical health care system have a problem with cost? So can this ever be free? Can we give health care away for free, folks? At $3.5 trillion a year? Why don't we fix the problem and save all that money? 75% of that cost is from all this chronic disease. And on the other side, is obesity just another marker of chronic metabolic disease problems? Yes. Obesity is a marker, but not all obese people have metabolic disease. Okay? What is common between normal weight diabetic and the obese diabetic? Well, insulin, chronic metabolic inflammation, they're both probably consuming in their restaurant food and processed foods a lot more than their forefathers ever did. And so insulin dysregulation, all these metabolic pathways are what common. It's just the thin person apparently didn't have a way that it showed up with so many pounds of fat, okay? But he still got his fatty liver. He still got his hypertension. He still got his cancer or whatever, dementia, okay? So what is common between the normal weight diabetic and obese diabetic? Probably insulin dysregulation, metabolic syndrome. And then what percent of the healthcare costs go to treat chronic medical diseases in this country? What percent of this, all these $3.5 trillion, what percent is spent on the chronic disease? 75%. 75% is just on managing, never curing or stopping a problem. And yet we saw the kids in 9 days reverse themselves, didn't we? In 9 days, yeah. And I see it here. I see tremendous weight loss here, 40, 30, total off their insulin, off their metformin. Okay, and you are part of the 40% world population, are you part of the 40% world population with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? Are you? Make sure your doctor knows that they're looking for the high triglycerides, the insulin levels. And have I been doing that all the time? I sure have. Maybe get an ultrasound. But if you're in those healthy ranges, I'm not going to waste money on an ultrasound. I already know you're fine. Is therefore a calorie? That's a lie of the industry. The Coca-Cola industry will say, whether you get a calorie from the cake or a calorie from the steak, it's still the same calorie of energy. And they'll argue sugar only has 4 calories, fat has 9 calories per gram. But you can see sugar is metabolized very differently. It is not the same thing. Not all calories are the same. So those people who are nutritionists and dietitians, they're off if they're saying calories in and calories out and blaming you because they say you overeat and you don't exercise enough. It's your fault that we have this problem. It's not. It's hidden. Those kids, are 3, 4, 5, 6. They're not already trained to become self-serving sloths. They're just being fed the typical variety of food through the WIC program, right? So is sugar a toxic substance? Did we prove it? Is there research now? Does it have a name? Methyl glyoxal. Yes, it does. Do the banks know that sugar is a problem? Oh, by the way, this is interesting. Morgan Stanley, that's a bank out there. That Morgan Stanley did a study, and they looked at a 20-year projection on the problem with the cost of the healthcare dollars, and they then said, if you project out 20 years and you don't do something about what's driving this cost, we are going to have no GDP. There's going to be no growth. We're going to collapse as a nation. Okay. If they, however, said if we start controlling this, then we can probably sustain a 2.9 growth rate. The banks know. Then there was another European study, Swiss something. There was another bank, and they put out 2 statements. Yeah, the Swiss credit system. And their first statement in 2013, they pointed out that they looked at all the sugar studies. They said, could sugar be doing this? And they looked at multiple studies. We're talking about bankers projecting sales. And they said they couldn't find any benefit of sugar, but they saw all these detrimental aspects. And they said the sheer volume is speaking to us that this is dragging us down. Then in 2016, they came out with the article called Fat, the New Health Paradigm 2016, in which they went on and saying high carbohydrates and vegetable oils, and I agree, vegetable oils are all oxidized, worthless pieces of material, are reasons for this chronic metabolic syndrome. And if we don't deal with this, we're not going to have a financial future. And they pointed out that saturated fats and monounsaturated fats were not the problem. So even the banks know that we have to solve this if we're going to have a problem. So start helping yourself. So when you come to the last thing, are you feeling flu-like symptoms now when you think about what you ate today? So any other questions? Yes, sir.
Why do we have more doctors like you?
Oh, well, bless your heart. Thank you for the encouraging words. Well, you know what? I never put money as the end point of my being. I put I'm wealthy and healthy patients. And I love the Lord Jesus as my Savior. I'm a Christian. So I have other reasons to do work. I don't need entertainment and money and fun in that sense. So that's why I do it. So, look at all the money they make here. Well, I don't know why. We have 4 other wonderful doctors here, Dr. Merrick, Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Kaur, and Pia Patel. And I tell you, boy, Pia Patel is doing fantastically. She's been with us a year. I have no criticisms of her. She just drank like a sponge off of me and any of the training. She's wonderful. So we are Tustin Longevity Center, TLC doctors.com, tlcdoctors.com. The number at the clinic is 714-544-1521. You can pick up the bars, and not see your sugar spike. We did the research, not see your insulin go up. There is no sugar in here. This is all natural. You can look at, go on our website, TLC Doctors, and look at the white paper and look at the research. And make an appointment. You can do walk-ins to this IV suite here. You can bring a family member or a guest, and you get a discount. They'll get a discount. And so let's do things that actually we know how to repair this stuff. Let's do this and make it happen. I guess with that, I'll say good night. Isn't it 8:30?
I think we did it.
Oh, okay. Then thank you. Good night. All right.
Oh, wow.